In 1923, a West Virginia coal miner opened his tin bucket 800 feet underground and ate a sandwich made of nothing but white bread, lard, and salt. He worked another 10 hours on that one sandwich. Number 14 on this list was so revolting that mine doctors warned against it, yet it powered the men who built the American steel industry. Number 3 contained an ingredient that would horrify a modern nutritionist. These 20 meals were carried into the pit every single morning in a tin bucket called a snap tin or a dinner pail. Hit that subscribe button. Let us count down the 20 disgusting meals coal miners actually carried down the pit every day. Number 20. Cold tea in a tin bottle. The miner's drink was not coffee. It was not water. It was cold tea, brewed strong at 4 in the morning, poured into a tin bottle, and lowered into the pit with him. No milk, no sugar, just black, bitter tea that had gone room temperature by the time he reached the coalface 2 hours later. The taste was tannic enough to strip enamel from teeth, but it carried something water alone could not. A small dose of caffeine and a taste of home in the dark. A pound of cheap tea cost about 20 cents in 1925, enough for a month of pit shifts. Some miners added a pinch of oatmeal to the bottle. It bloomed into a strange, gritty porridge by lunchtime that they drank in long swallows. Modern Americans cannot imagine drinking cold, unsweetened tea from a metal flask covered in coal dust. The men who built Pittsburgh did it every day for 40 years. Number 19. Bread and dripping. This was the sandwich that fed America's coal fields. A thick slice of white bread, often 3 days old to save money, spread with cold beef dripping that had been scraped from Sunday's roast. The dripping was brown and gelatinous, with the dark jelly from the meat juices still settled at the bottom of the jar. Miners scooped from the bottom because that was where the flavor lived, spread thick. Salt on top. Another slice of bread, wrapped in newspaper or waxed paper, into the tin bucket. By the time the miner ate it 600 feet underground, the bread had absorbed the fat and turned almost translucent in the middle. The taste was rich, salty, and deeply savory. A pound of fresh dripping cost about a nickel in 1930. This single sandwich was what kept a man swinging a pick for 10 hours straight. Modern dietitians would weep. Modern miners would eat it. Number 18. Sugar sandwich. Here is a sandwich that horrifies modern parents. White bread, a thick smear of butter or margarine, then a heaping spoonful of white granulated sugar shaken across the surface until every crystal caught the light. Top slice on, wrap and pack. The miner ate it for the energy alone, pure carbohydrate to fuel muscles that had been swinging an 8-pound pick since 5 in the morning. The sugar grated audibly between his teeth. It was the closest thing to dessert that ever made it into the pit. Welsh and Cornish immigrant miners in Pennsylvania ate this exact sandwich. Their grandfathers had eaten it in the slate mines back home. A 5-pound bag of sugar cost about 25 cents. Children begged their fathers for a corner of the sugar buddy when he came home. Mothers shook their heads, but they made it again the next morning because it was cheap, it was filling, and it kept their husbands alive. Number 17. Condensed milk sandwich. When the lid came off a tin of sweetened condensed milk in a miner's kitchen at 4 in the morning, the smell filled the whole house. Thick, caramelized, almost vanilla. Mothers spread it across 2 slices of white bread like jam. The condensed milk soaked into the bread immediately, turning the slices a pale yellow that darkened to gold by lunchtime. By the time the miner unwrapped it under the lamp at his post, the sandwich had partially fused together into something halfway between bread and toffee. He ate it folded in half because it was too soft to hold flat. A tin of carnation cost about 15 cents in 1935. It fed a miner for 3 lunches. The sweetness was almost overwhelming, but men working in 95-degree heat, 800 feet underground, burned through 5,000 calories a shift. They needed every grain of that sugar. Number 16. Treacle buddy. British and Welsh miners in the American coal fields brought treacle with them. black, bitter, viscous molasses sold in 2-pound tins. Spread on bread, it dripped slowly through the crumb like dark tar. The taste was deeply mineral, almost smoky, with a sweetness that hit the back of the throat rather than the tongue. Treacle buddies traveled badly. By lunchtime, the bread had soaked through, and the bottom slice was a sodden brown mess that the miner ate with his fingers and licked off his palm. Children in mining families remembered the smell of treacle from their father's lunch buckets when they kissed him goodbye at 4 in the morning. A tin cost about 30 cents and lasted weeks. Modern nutritionists now know that blackstrap molasses contains more iron per spoonful than red meat. The miners did not know this. They just knew it tasted like work, and work was what kept the family fed. Number 15. Lard and salt sandwich. This is the meal that built coal country. Lard, pure rendered pork fat, was the cheapest fat in America in 1930, about 8 cents a pound. White bread cost a dime a loaf. Salt was free. The sandwich was assembled in 30 seconds at 5 in the morning by a miner's wife who had been awake since 4. 2 slices of bread, a finger-thick smear of cold white lard, a generous sprinkle of table salt. Wrap. Done. The lard had no flavor of its own beyond a vague meatiness, but the salt made it explode in the mouth. Texture was the strange part. Thick, slick, almost waxy at first, then melting against the warmth of the tongue. Miners in West Virginia ate this exact sandwich 5 days a week for their entire working lives. They lived to 70. Their grandsons eat Subway sandwiches with twice the calories and twice the sodium and call the old way disgusting. Number 14. Bacon fat sandwich. First pattern break. Here is where things get harder to stomach. When a miner's wife fried bacon for breakfast, she did not throw away the fat. She did not even let it cool in the pan. She poured it directly onto a slice of bread that had been waiting on the counter, salted it, pressed another slice on top, and wrapped it in grease-proof paper while it was still warm. The bacon grease soaked through the bread within minutes. By the time the miner ate it, the sandwich was translucent with fat, heavy in the hand, and dripping yellow grease onto his fingers when he picked it up. There was no bacon in the bacon fat sandwich, just the fat. The actual bacon went into the family's dinner that evening, or to the children. The miner got the fat because the fat was the fuel. Mine doctors in the 1920s warned that miners were eating too much grease, that the heart could not stand it. The miners ignored them and lived. The doctors who warned them often died younger than their patients. Modern science has now confirmed what those miners knew. Hard physical labor requires fat in quantities a desk worker could never tolerate. They were not eating disgustingly. They were eating correctly for the work they did. Number 13. Cold suet pudding wedge. Welsh and Northern English miners brought this tradition into the American coal fields. It was a suet pudding made on Sunday evening, with flour, shredded beef suet, dried fruit and treacle, all steamed in a basin for 4 hours, cooled overnight and sliced into thick wedges Monday morning. The wedge went into the snap tin cold and stayed cold all the way to the coal face. The texture was dense, slightly waxy from the cold suet, and surprisingly sweet from the fruit. Miners ate it with their hands. The suet melted slowly in the mouth, coating the tongue with rendered beef fat that carried the flavors of currants and molasses. A pound of suet cost about 18 cents in 1928. A single pudding could feed a miner for 3 days. The sound of a wedge of cold pudding being unwrapped under a carbide lamp 700 feet underground was the sound of Sunday still echoing into Wednesday. Number 12. The miner's apple. Some miners carried a single raw onion in their bucket every day. They called it the miner's apple. They ate it the same way a man might eat a fruit, whole, biting into it. No salt, no bread, no accompaniment. The first bite filled the entire chamber with the sharp acid smell of fresh onion, strong enough that other miners knew immediately what their workmate was eating. The eyes watered, the mouth burned. The flavor lingered for hours. Pennsylvania miners swore the raw onion kept them healthy through long winters in damp tunnels. They were not entirely wrong. Raw onions contain vitamin C and sulfur compounds that fight bacterial infection. An onion cost about a penny. The miner who ate one a day saved his family the cost of doctors he could not afford anyway. The smell on his breath when he got home was almost unbearable, but his wife understood. His grandfather had eaten the same onion before him. Number 11. Pickled herring wrapped in newspaper. Eastern European miners in Pennsylvania and Ohio, including Polish, Slovak, and Ukrainian miners, brought pickled herring into the American pits. The fish came in wooden barrels of brine and vinegar, sold for about 2 cents apiece by the immigrant grocer on the corner. The miner's wife wrapped a single whole herring in newspaper and tucked it into his bucket. By lunchtime, the newspaper had absorbed brine and printed black ink in patches across the silver scales. He ate it with his fingers, bones and all, sucking the salt off each rib before swallowing. The smell was overpowering in a confined coal seam. Fish, vinegar, and pickling spice mixed with the sulfur of fresh coal. Other miners moved away from him to eat. He did not care. The salt replaced what he had sweated out. The fat kept him warm. The protein rebuilt the muscles he had been tearing apart since dawn. By 1940, this lunch had nearly vanished from the American coal fields, replaced by white bread and lunch meat. The Eastern European miners who lived longest were the ones who never gave up the herring. Number 10. The Cornish pasty. Second pattern break. Here is where immigration shaped American mining food forever. Cornish miners who came to Pennsylvania and Michigan in the 1860s brought the pasty with them, and it changed how the American coal industry ate for the next 100 years. A proper miner's pasty was a thick half-moon of pastry, crimped along the curved edge into a rope-like seal. Inside, diced beef, potato, onion, and turnip, seasoned with nothing but salt and pepper. The crimped edge was not decoration. It was the handle. The miner held the pasty by the crimped edge with his coal-blackened hands, ate the rest of the pastry, and threw the crimp away. Some legends say the discarded crimps were left for the Tommyknockers, the spirits of the mine. The truth was simpler. The crimp was contaminated with whatever was on the miner's hands, which included arsenic, lead, and coal dust. Throwing it away was survival. A pasty cost about 8 cents to make in 1900. It stayed warm for hours wrapped in a cloth napkin. It contained a full meal in one self-contained package. It was perhaps the most engineered food in mining history. And it was the only food on this list that the miners actually looked forward to. Number 9. Cold boiled bacon. This was the sandwich a miner got when his wife had time to cook on Sunday and stretched the meat all week. A 2-pound piece of bacon, the cured, salted, fatty kind sold for about 12 cents a pound, was boiled for 3 hours on Sunday evening until it turned soft and pale pink. It was then sliced thick and refrigerated. Monday morning, 2 slices of bacon went between 2 slices of bread, no butter, no mustard. By lunchtime, the bacon had warmed in the bucket and released its fat into the bread. The taste was salty, mild, and faintly metallic from the curing process. The texture was strange, soft, and gelatinous in places, with white seams of cold fat that the miner ate without complaint. Modern eaters who try cold boiled bacon describe it as something like canned ham gone wrong. The miners ate it because it was meat, and meat was what kept them ahead of the wage cuts and the lung damage. Number 8. Mustard sandwich. There were days the cupboard was bare. There was bread. There was a jar of yellow mustard. There was nothing else. A miner's wife spread the mustard thick, sometimes a full 1/4 inch deep, between 2 slices of bread and wrapped it as if it were any other sandwich. The miner ate it under his lamp 2 miles into the seam and never said a word about it when he got home. The vinegar burn cleared his sinuses of coal dust temporarily. The yellow color stained his lips and his teeth. He drank water from his flask afterward to wash the heat down. Children in mining families remembered the mustard sandwich as the symbol of the lean weeks before payday. A jar of French's cost about 12 cents in 1935 and lasted a month. When the times got better, the mustard sandwich disappeared from the snap tin. When the times got worse again, it returned the next morning. Number 7. Cheese rind in greaseproof paper. Cheese was expensive in mining country. A pound of cheddar cost about 30 cents in 1932, more than 2 hours of underground wages. So the miner's wife bought a small block, used the inside for the children's grilled cheese, and saved the wax-coated rind for her husband's bucket. The rind was hard, almost rubbery, with a thin layer of cheese still clinging to the inside surface. The miner gnawed on it like a dog with a bone, scraping the last of the cheese off with his front teeth before chewing the wax to soften it. Some men spit the wax out at the end. Some swallowed it. The rind cost nothing because it had already been paid for. It provided a small dose of fat and salt and the memory of cheese. It was the lunch that proved poverty had its own engineering. Nothing wasted, nothing thrown away, every calorie accounted for. Number 6. Potted meat sandwich. The Underwood deviled ham hit American grocery stores in the 1880s, and it changed mining lunches forever. A 4-ounce can cost about 10 cents. It contained shredded ham, pork fat, spices, and sometimes a small piece of organ meat ground in to stretch the can further. The miner's wife spread the brown-pink paste across white bread in a thin layer. The smell when the can was opened was overwhelming. Heavily salted pork, mustard, and vinegar, all concentrated into something that smelled less like food than like medicine. By lunchtime, the paste had dried slightly into a crust on the inside of the bread, but the salty meat flavor was still strong enough to taste through coal dust. A miner could eat 2 of these sandwiches and feel he had eaten meat for lunch, even though the actual meat content was small. Modern eaters refuse to open these cans. The smell alone sends them running. Coal miners ate them 5 days a week and asked for them again on Saturday. Number 5. Bovril sandwich. Third pattern break. Here is the strange invention that conquered the American coal regions. Bovril, invented by a Scotsman named John Lawson Johnston in 1870, was thick black beef extract sold in small glass jars. It was a concentrated stock made of beef, salt, and yeast extract. By the time it reached American mining towns in the 1890s, it had become essential lunch food. A miner's wife scraped a 1/4 teaspoon of Bovril across a slice of bread. More than that, and the salt level would crack a tooth. Then she folded the bread in half over itself. The taste was overwhelming, intensely meaty, dark, almost burnt, with a salt content that made the eyes water. Miners ate it because a single jar of Bovril cost about 20 cents and lasted 6 weeks of lunches. They ate it because the strong beef flavor temporarily masked the taste of coal dust that coated everything in their mouths after 4 hours underground. They ate it because the salt replaced what they had sweated out. Food companies spent decades convincing Americans that lunch meant fresh sliced bread and a single piece of cold meat. Meanwhile, the miners who actually built America were getting more sodium, more umami, and more usable amino acids out of a teaspoon of brown paste than any modern lunch could deliver. They knew. We forgot. Number 4. Cold porridge wedge. This was a Scottish miner's tradition that survived in the anthracite fields of eastern Pennsylvania. A pot of oatmeal porridge cooked thick on Sunday night was poured into a shallow tray and left to set overnight. By Monday morning, it had turned into a dense, beige slab that could be sliced like cake. A wedge of cold porridge went into the snap tin wrapped in a cloth. The texture was disturbing to anyone not raised on it. Cold, dense, slightly slimy where the steam had condensed inside the cloth. The flavor was nothing, just toasted oats and a vague memory of milk. Miners ate it for the slow-burning energy. Modern nutritionists call this exact preparation overnight oats and sell it for $9 a jar. Mining families called it Tuesday. The slab of porridge cost about 6 cents a pound to make. It kept a man working through the morning shift with no sugar spike and no crash. Number 3. Bread sop in cold tea. This was the meal of the desperately tired or the desperately hungry. A miner who could not face chewing another large sandwich would tear his bread into chunks and drop them into the dregs of his cold tea bottle, screw the cap back on, and shake. By the time he opened it, the bread had absorbed the tea and swelled into a soft, mushy mass that he ate with his fingers or drank straight from the bottle. The taste was tannic, bitter, and faintly sweet from any residual sugar. The texture was paste. This was the lunch of a man who had been swinging a pick for 6 hours and could not summon the energy to chew. It was also the lunch of children too young to be in the mines but old enough to be working as breaker boys, sorting coal from slate above ground. Their teeth were sometimes too damaged from the dust and the work to chew solid bread. The bread sop in cold tea cost about 4 cents and asked nothing of the eater except that he keep working until the whistle blew. Number 2. Pickled egg. By the 1890s, the saloons and lunch counters of American mining towns were selling pickled eggs from huge glass jars for 2 cents apiece. Miners bought them on the way home and brought them in by the dozen on Monday morning. The eggs lived in their own jar of vinegar and brine in the kitchen all week. Each morning, the wife fished one out, blotted it dry, and dropped it into the snap tin. By lunchtime, the egg had absorbed the smells of everything else in the bucket. The miner peeled it under his lamp, ate it in 3 bites, and felt his eyes water from the vinegar tang. The yolk was the prize, solid, slightly rubbery, intensely salty from the brine. Eastern Europeans added beet juice to the brine, turning the whites a violent pink-purple that stained the miners' fingers. Italian miners added garlic and red pepper flakes. The pickled egg crossed every ethnic line in the American coalfields because it was cheap, it was protein, and it traveled. Number 1. The snap. At the top of this list is the meal that defined coal mining in America for nearly 100 years. Not one sandwich. A combination. 2 slices of bread thick with cold dripping. A whole pickled onion wrapped in newspaper. A wedge of cheese or a slice of cold bacon if the family was doing well. All packed into a black tin bucket with a tin bottle of cold tea wedged in beside it. This was the snap, the bait, the dinner pail. It cost about 10 cents to assemble. It contained roughly 1,800 calories. It kept a man working underground from 6 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon, swinging a pick or shoveling coal into mine cars, breathing dust that was slowly turning his lungs to stone. The pickled onion was the centerpiece. The miner ate it last, biting into it like an apple, the vinegar cutting through the fat of the dripping sandwich, the sharp crunch ringing in his teeth. Other miners knew when their workmate had reached the onion. They could smell it from 40 feet down the seam. The snap was disgusting by any modern standard. It was also a complete nutritional package designed by working-class wives who could not afford to feed their husbands wrong. Too little fat and he could not work. Too little salt and he would cramp. Too little protein and he would weaken. They engineered this lunch over generations of trial and error in their kitchens at 4 in the morning. We threw it away when we got rich enough to choose. We forgot what it was for. We forgot who built the country on it. Make one of these this week. The lard and salt sandwich. The bread and dripping, the pickled onion. Eat it cold from a paper wrapper at noon, and think about the man who built the railroad you drove to work on, the steel mill that made your kitchen, the power plant that lights your living room right now. These were not disgusting meals. They were honest meals. We just got soft enough to forget the difference. Drop the one you would try in the comments. Because these meals built America, and most of us would not survive a single shift on them.